New York police have fatally shot a 66-year-old mentally ill woman who allegedly lunged at them wielding a baseball bat. So NBC4 New York reports that officers responded to a 911 call from her neighbors and found the woman in her apartment naked and holding a pair of scissors. After being convinced to put the scissors down, the woman picked up a baseball bat and tried to hit him with it. An officer then fired 2 shots, striking the woman in her torso. More background on who this victim was. The woman had schizophrenia, and there had been past 911 reports about her in the past. CBS 2 News reports that NYPD Assistant Chief Larry Nakunin said that the officer in question had a taser at his disposal, but for some reason it was not used during this incident. So a lot of questions are being raised about this incident. State Senator Ruben Diaz says, quote, "To me, it is very difficult to understand how a woman who is 66 years old and has emotional problems should have to die like this, especially if there are 4 or 5 police officers in the room with her." Another person commented, New York City's public advocate Letitia James says, quote, "While we are still learning details about this evening's incident, I am renewing my call to expand the use of non-lethal force by the NYPD. I look forward to working with the NYPD toward common sense criminal justice measures that protect our police officers and the communities they serve." Now, just to provide a little further context, it has been reported by CBS 2 News that the officer who fired is white and the woman, the victim, was black. So I want to get a comment from both of you. Do you think that this is at all racially motivated, or do you think this was just a case of excessive force being used?
I don't want to say it was racially motivated because I don't know. We don't know. But I will say, and reading the story, there's not much a 66-year-old woman can do with a bat that's schizophrenic that would warrant her dying from two gunshots to the torso. Mm-hmm. So it's just mind-blowing. But I don't think it was racially charged, though.
It is interesting that that is included in the article, though. You know, this is from Jezebel.com, and it's interesting that they would make a note, sort of, that just so you know, the woman was black, the officer is white. Do you think that's necessary, Cenk?
Yes, I do. So it's interesting that I got interviewed by Complex Media earlier this morning before I read this story, and we were talking about how to fix the police shootings. And the 2 things that I mentioned are, boom, right in this story. So the smaller issue, although it's very large to a lot of people, is the implicit bias. And so we've got to fix the training and tell people, hey, listen, this is a known fact. Study after study shows that we have some degree of bias. And it's not just white cops, it's actually black cops, Latino cops. It's bias that's all in the back of our heads subconsciously. And studies bear it out. So that, for example, they think that younger black males, they add 4 years to their age in estimating how old they are. That is one of dozens of studies that you could talk about. Should we train the cops to know that so that they go, wait a minute, I should pause. Maybe I'm making an assumption here about this person based on their race. Now, do I want them to pause forever and ever as somebody's shooting at them? Of course not. Do I want them to pause if it's a 66-year-old woman with a bat and she was naked, so there's no possibility of a gun? Yeah, I want them to pause. And I want them to think, hey, maybe I'm overreacting here, because studies show you're overreacting a lot of times. Not every time, but a lot of times according to these studies. Now I say that's a smaller thing, but that's a giant thing. That Black Lives Matter is all about that. It makes a big, big difference. And if you're in the groups the studies bear out get shot more often, that couldn't be a larger issue for you. But I think the even bigger issue is we have got to stop the cops from panicking. The training is making them panic. Oh my God, my life's in danger. My life is in constant danger. And I cannot take even the smallest percentage chance that my well-being could be hurt in any way. We're training them to say, your job is to get home. Your job is not that. It is to protect and to serve. If the firemen thought my job is to get home, they would never enter any burning building. That is not their job. Their job involves some degree of risk. Now, let's get to the core of this particular issue. I think those 2 issues are exactly what went wrong here. But even more so, we have trained the humanity out of them. Because as a human being, if a 66-year-old woman is attacking me with a bat, look, I could be wrong. Maybe I panic in the middle of that, but I know myself to some degree. I think there's no way in the world I shoot her. And I think that for almost all of you out there, I believe in you. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think over 90% of you don't shoot her. You think, how am I going to stop that bat? Am I going to absorb the blow? Am I going to do a taser? Am I going to block it with something? But you don't think, I'm going to kill that person. She's 66. How much damage could she possibly do? And look, I don't want to take a baseball bat to the head. Of course, I get that. I understand that, right? But if I'm a big cop and there's a 66-year-old woman,
Right.
am I willing to absorb that blow with my arm or whatever it is in a worst case scenario? Or would I just, I don't want to even bother. I'll just shoot her and kill her. I hope that most of you don't think that way, man, because that's a terrible, terrible way to think.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid we're training them to think that way.
And I like the response of the public advocate in this case, saying that we want to work with the NYPD. Let's problem solve here. How did it get to this point where the taser what was at his disposal and wasn't used? Why wasn't that the first thing that he reached for, knowing that the caller, that the victim, had a history of 911 calls, had a history of mental illness? This should have been on record. This should have been something that they were aware of going in to deal with the situation. Jason, what do you think about how he didn't reach for the taser first off?
Oh, well, that mind-blowing, of course, because Cenk, you took the words right out of my mouth. If this woman was coming at me with a bat, I would for sure, and if I was a cop, being the size that I am, I'm sure a lot of these cops are big dudes, take the blow, calm the lady down, try to disarm her in any way possible, boom.
You have backup. That's another thing
There
to
was
point
5
out. It
cops
wasn't
there.
one cop, right?
Right, and I also love how Letitia James said, common sense criminal justice measures. Common sense is what's lacking here. But who knows why the taser wasn't used? Maybe they're afraid of using tasers, but I mean, it's again, we weren't there, so I don't want to. I can't speculate as to why he didn't use the taser, but yeah, I mean, it's just.
It's the problem is that we've seen this movie too many times, and so it can't be that cops here. I'm gonna in a weird defense of them, right? It can't be that cops are more afraid than the average guy. It can't be that a special breed of cowards become police officers. I refuse to accept that that's the case. Mainly because of logic. I don't think that's a logical thing that all the cowards become cops? No, I think that we're training them to be constantly afraid of their lives and literally in this case trigger happy. Not that they're happy to shoot, but that they're so worried, so panicked. We're training them to be more afraid than they need to be. That's why we're seeing this all over the country, in New York, in Ohio, in Florida, in all these different places, in Minnesota, in Louisiana. It goes on and on. They shoot too quickly because we drilled into their heads, be afraid, be afraid, be afraid. Everything's going to kill you. Everything's going to harm you. So that's why they do this. I think you put that cop without the training as a regular human being in that same situation, no way he shoots her. I mean, I don't know. I don't know the guy, right? Maybe he's just a totally freaked out panic case, right? But I would be surprised if a normal human being sees a lady coming at them with a bat and thinks, I'll just kill her, right? Like, look, I got hit with a bat. We were teenagers. Maybe you say, hey, that teenager kid who hit me with a bat is not as strong as the 66-year-old woman. I don't know, right? It wouldn't have crossed my mind to murder the kid. Okay, it wouldn't have, if I had a gun, I wouldn't have shot the kid. There's no way in the world I would have shot the kid. So I hope you wouldn't have shot the kid, or in this case, the woman. For the cops, stop it. Come on, for Christ's sake, do better training. Stop training them to be cowards. We need independent media to make sure that we hold corporate media accountable. The people that can make that happen is you. You make the Young Turks possible. tytnetwork.com/join. Join us. Be the revolution.